Hello, good day to everyone. Okay, previously we learned the different processes of communication and the elements involved in the communication process. We will now discuss the different communication models to better understand how communication happens in different or various ways. There are three objectives that are expected to be fulfilled. Number one, to be able to understand the three standard communication models. Number two, to be able to differentiate the various models of communication. And number three, to be able to distinguish the unique features of one communication process from the other. Let's go back to this principle. Communication is a process. So in here, the process of communication can be thoroughly studied through the communication models that are mainly conceptual models that aids or helps in explaining how something works. To better understand the process of communication, these three models will be presented. These are the three standard communication models, namely the linear, the transactional, and the interactive. If we say standard, it is the basis that supports an idea. Before I discuss the models, let's have a review on the elements involved in the communication process. So basically, the sender is the source or origin of the message. He or she encodes and transmits the message to the receiver. And the receiver is the destination of the message. He or she decodes the message received through interpretation. The channel is the medium where the message is sent through. Feedback is the process through which the message is sent by the receiver in response to the message of the sender. Okay, noise is the common barrier that hinders the communication process and it makes the process ineffective or unsuccessful. Take note, if we are talking about effective and successful communication, these are the only elements: the sender, the message, the receiver, the channel, and the feedback. But if we will take into consideration the ineffective and unsuccessful communication process, the noise or barrier will be added as the elements involved. Okay, we will now discuss the communication models. So first of all it is about the linear communication model. If we say linear from the word line or one way process. A linear communication model is the first model that was made by experts to understand the process of communication. So this kind of model keeps on improving and updating through the years. So the characteristics of these models are the following. First is unidirectional, from the prefix uni, meaning one, directional or direction, meaning way or path. So unidirectional is a one-way communication process. Okay, the speaker sends the message to the receiver with or without effects to the receiver. Example of this is the mass communication. There is a sender and multiple receivers from different locations. So the speaker sends the message to the receivers from different parts of the world or different location using technology or media. The received message by the receivers, it can be with effect or without effect to them. That is unidirectional because the receivers cannot directly give feedback or response to the sender. So that is the first characteristic. Second is about the simplicity of this model. Simple, it presents a simple communication act. The transmission of one-way causality conveying only a cause and effect. This is not seen or observed as a process since it is like the transmission of the message by which there is only the beginning and there is no interchanging of roles between the sender and the receiver. It is one way only. From sender, the message is from sender to receiver and then that's it. It is like a cause and effect process also because the cause will be from the sender and then the effect will be on the side of the receiver. That's why it is the transmission of one-way causality, conveying on the cause and effect. By the way, this is causality, it's not casualty, okay? Sorry for the typo. Okay, for the third characteristic, persuasion, not a mutual understanding. This is a one-way direction which promotes advice and influence with feedback but not directed to the sender, meaning there is a lack of feedback. This is the same as unidirectional, the first characteristic. It is a one-way direction only. Okay? From sender to receiver. The message is from the sender to the receiver only, with or without effect. This one naman for persuasion, not a mutual understanding, with feedback but not directed to the sender. Okay, persuasion meaning you convince someone. This is more on you. This is about the persuasion or the convincing power rather than mutual understanding, meaning interaction between the sender and the receiver. So there's no interaction between the sender and receiver. It is merely on the effect of the message to the receiver. That is the persuasion, not mutual understanding. For the fourth characteristic, values psychological effect over social effect. Psychological effect over social effect. This means that the psychological is more on the cognitive or the knowledge aspect. And then for the social effect, this is about the relationship. So for linear communication model, it is more on the understanding of the message rather than building the relationship or building relationship. It is about the message, not about building a relationship. That's why it is linear. It is one-way communication because there's no interaction between the sender and the receiver. So the message is from the sender and it will be transmitted to the receiver, and that's it. No more feedback, no more response, no more reply. So this is linear communication model. So this focuses on, again, understanding of the message rather than building relationship. So in this part, there is no assurance that the communication process is effective because the message is sent to the receiver and the receiver just receive it without the need to give a feedback. So example of linear communication model. First is Aristotelian model. Was developed long time ago during the ancient times. It is the simplest model among all the communication models because of its elements and process. What are the different elements or the basic elements under Aristotelian model? The speaker, the message, and the audience only. It is very simple as that. Speaker, message, and audience. If you say the speaker, this is the sender. The speech is the message, and then the audience is the receiver. The effect, this is the effect of the message to the audience only, with or without effect. So this effect is not a part or it's not one of the elements in the Aristotelian model. For Aristotelian model, it is only the speaker, the speech, and the audience. Okay, that's it for Aristotelian model. Second example, Laswell model, one of the earliest models and was developed by Harold Laswell in 1948. If you notice, all the names of the models came from the last name of the one who developed the model. Like, for example, Aristotelian model a while ago, Aristotelian or Aristotle. For this Laswell model, Harold Laswell in 1948. For Aristotelian model, there are 3 basic elements only. For Laswell model, it consists of 5 basic elements that follow a linear pattern. We say linear pattern, one-way communication process. Okay, let's have the basic elements, the 5. First is the communication, which is the sender or the communicator as the sender. The message is still the message. The medium is the channel used in transmitting the message. The receiver is the receiver of the message, and the effect of the message to the receiver. If you notice in the Aristotelian model a while ago, the effect is not part of the basic elements. But for Laswell model, it is one of the basic elements in the model. So effect. Who says the message or who created the message? The communicator, the sender. In what channel the message is sent through? This is the medium. To whom the message is sent? To the receiver. And what is the effect of the message to the receiver? With or without effect, it's still okay. That is for Laswell model. Okay, for the 5 basic elements, communicator, message, medium, receiver, and the effect. Okay, let's move to the third example model. Okay, Jacobson's model. Jacobson's model has 6 components or 6 elements. First is the addresser, meaning the sender of the message. Addressee is the receiver of the message. Context is the situation in which the message was given. The context or the situation. The message is still the message, the idea to be expressed. And contact and code, the channel through which the message passes, and the form of message, how the message was formed or constructed. If you notice again for the 3 models that I already presented, all of them have sender, receiver, message, but the names of the elements vary depending on the model. Okay, for the addresser, the sender, addressee, receiver, context is the situation, message is the idea to be expressed or the message to be transmitted, and contact and code, the channel to be used in sending the message. Okay, for the addresser, the same, sender, context, message, code, and message is in the middle, and the addressee is at the last part. So the message was from the addresser to be transmitted to the receiver. That's it. It also follows a linear pattern because the message is from addresser to addressee only. Okay, linear pattern pa rin siya. Okay, last example for linear communication model, the Shannon-Weaver. This is the second to the last. Shannon-Weaver information theory model. Information theory model, this is not about face-to-face interaction or communication. This is about the transmission of electronic information using technology, using devices, using internet connection. Okay, here for the Shannon-Weaver information theory model, this is developed to illustrate the transmission of electronic information. This is in 1948. Okay, what are the elements involved in the Shannon-Weaver information theory model? The sender, the encoder, the channel, the decoder, the receiver. The sender is the person or the information source. It could be the person. The transmitter is not a person. The encoder is the transmitter of the message. Channel is still the channel where the message is sent through. The reception is the decoder. This is not a person also. So this is the decoder or the thing that will receive the message. And this destination is the person, the receiver, who should receive the message, who will decode the message. And then for the feedback, this should not be here because Shannon-Weaver information theory model is part of or one of the models in the linear communication model. As I have said a while ago, in the characteristic of linear communication model, the linear communication model should have a feedback, but not directed to the sender. But I will discuss with you this one later on. Okay, let's have the elements involved. Let's discuss them one by one. Okay, for the sender, the information or the source chooses the message to be conveyed to the receiver and the channel to use and sends the message. Basically, this is the person who will make or who will construct the message, who will send or encode the message. Okay, next is the encoder, the transmitter. This changes the message into signals that sends it over the communication channel. Okay, sends or message into signals, changes the message into signals. This could be the mobile company or internet provider that we use in sending electronic information, such as for the mobile company, the Smart, the Globe, the TM, TNT, GOMO, and others, or the Sun. Internet provider, the PLDT, the Globe, the Sky Broadband, and others. Those can be the transmitter or the encoder. Okay, for the channel, this is the medium the sender uses to transmit the message. If we say medium, this could be the devices used in sending the message. Devices such as laptop, desktop, computer, cell phone, tablet, and others, other forms of channel or other forms of medium to be used in transmitting the message. For the decoder, the reception, this does the opposite of the encoder. It decodes the message sent over the channels. Here, the decoding part is not the interpretation part. Instead, it is the receiving part only. The decoder will receive the message sent by the sender using a transmitter and the channel. Okay, that is the decoder or the reception or receptor. And the receiver, the destination of the message. So it can be the person with the use of the smartphone or any device, so that the receiver can receive or will be successfully receive the message sent to him or her. So the receiver is the one who must get the message. The receiver can then provide a feedback which will then reverse their roles. So for this one, if the receiver receives the message immediately and he or she read and decoded the message immediately, he or she can give immediate feedback. But if the situation is like this, if the sender send an email towards the receiver and the receiver did not receive immediately the message because maybe the receiver is not online or the receiver did not read immediately the message, the feedback will not occur immediately. Okay, that is the implication for the information theory model. Okay, the receiver. And for the noise, still the noise is the disturbance that hinders the receiver from getting and understanding the message. What are the different disturbance in terms of the transmission of electronic information? Example of disturbance, noise, or barrier, fluctuating signal, no internet connection, or naubusan ng load, and others. Those are different forms. For the gadget or the device, na lobat, and etc. Yun yung mga barriers with regards to the transmission of electronic information. Okay, so that's it for the Shannon-Weaver information theory model. If, example, the sender sends a message through Gmail. So sa Gmail, ang gagamitin ni sender is the device plus the internet provider plus the channel to be used. Ano yung channel? Siguro ginamitan niya kasi kung wala namang Gmail account, wala ring device, wala ring internet connection, hindi siya magsisend. Kaya magkakaroon ng noise. Pero pag successful yung paggamit niya ng channel, the message will be sent through the decoder, and the decoder can immediately receive the message, and the receiver, kung nabasa niya kaagad yan, may feedback kaagad. But if the situation is hindi nabasa agad ni receiver yung message and the receiver nabasa siguro after an hour or after a day, the feedback makakat na dyan. Magiging one-way or linear communication model siya. This is common in the email-to-email transaction. Also with the snail mail or cell phone or the text messages, chat, video calls, and others. If meron siyang noise. So yung feedback dito, pwede siyang ma-direct or hindi siya ma-direct. But most of the time, if we are talking about electronic information, hanggang dito lang siya sa receiver. It will take time bago makapag-send ng reply o feedback si receiver papunta kay sender. Kaya the Shannon-Weaver information theory model is still under or one of the model in the linear communication model. Okay, let's have the last example for linear communication model, the Berlos SMCR model. S stands for sender, M is message, C is channel, R is receiver. Basically, Berlos SMCR model has 4 elements involved only. This is inspired from Shannon-Weaver information theory model, but Berlos SMCR model is on the face-to-face interaction, not on the transmission of electronic information. By this emphasize the coding and decoding of messages. So this is more on how the message is constructed and sent and interpreted. Okay. Let's have the elements. So for the source, or this is the sender, the message is still a message. Channel is the channel used in sending the message. Since this is the face-to-face interaction, the channel is not the device. It's not the technology. It's not about the other forms of channel, but it is the use of the 5 senses. Okay, so the receiver is still there. So I'll just discuss to you the sender and the receiver at the same time because they have the same considerations to be discussed. So for the source and receiver, they both have the communication skill, attitude, knowledge, social system, culture, and culture. So for the sender and receiver, or source and receiver, they play a significant role in the process. Without the following, communication will not take place. What are the following? These considerations. Okay, communication skills. This includes the skill in writing, speaking, listening, and reading. If the sender or the receiver is not a good communicator, or they are not good communicators, the transmission of the message may lose its essence. For the attitude, the source or the sender and the receiver's attitude should also be taken into consideration because their attitude towards each other can affect the meaning of the message. Since the sender is the source, he or she should have a knowledge and familiarity with the message being transmitted. Also, with the receiver should also have a prior or background knowledge about the message being talked about so that the sender and the receiver would understand each other with regards to the message being sent and received. Okay, for the social system is about the belief, the religion, the status, values, or any other social factors that affects how the sender and receiver understand the message. So here, the situation, the context, or the place are also part of the social system. So their differences with regards to belief, religion, status, and other forms should be taken into consideration also so that they would understand each other, so that there's no barrier that will occur in the communication process. Lastly, for the culture, this is about the understanding of one's culture. So understanding of culture should be applied so that no one can be offensive to other culture. So the sender should be familiar with the culture of the receiver. Likewise, with the receiver should have background information about the culture of the sender so that they will understand each other. There's no discrimination, there's no negativities that will occur during the communication process. So that's it for the source or the sender and the receiver. Let's have the message. Composed of the content, element, treatment, structure, and code. Okay, the message is very important in the communication process because it contains the ideas or the feelings or the beliefs or the information that one wants to convey. we say content, this is the entirety of the message from the beginning to end. So the content of the message should be complete from the beginning to end so that the message will not be misunderstood. It should be transmitted completely. Okay. For the elements, this is the use of the verbal or non-verbal signals and symbols. Like, for example, the gestures, facial expression, body language, words, or other languages. So if you notice the non-verbal and verbal signals and symbols are a part of the message already. It's not a part of the channel for the Berlos SMCR model. Yeah, take note of that. For the treatment, it is how the message is conveyed by the sender to the receiver, or how the receiver received or interpret the message. For the structure, the arrangement of thoughts, it should be in a chronological order. It should be, if you have 5 steps, you should transmit first the first step, second step, third, fourth, and fifth, not the other way around. Like, for example, you have 5 processes or 5 steps. You transmitted first the number 5, followed by 3, followed by 2, 4, and 1. What will happen if that will be the case? So for the structure, it should be in an arranged manner and in a chronological order. Okay, for the code is the channels used, particularly the devices or the non-verbal signs and symbols. Example, the videos, the text, the spoken words, also with the written verbal signals and symbols. That is a part of the code. So that is for the Berlos SMCR model. Lastly, the channel. Let's talk about the channel. These are the use of the 5 senses during the communication process. Since the Berlos SMCR model is more on the face-to-face interaction, linear communication model. This is applicable to the public communication and mass communication. Okay, for the channel, hearing, seeing, touching, smelling, and tasting. Hearing is the act of hearing. This is the act of listening and hearing. Sense of hearing, sense of sight, sense of touch, sense of smell, sense of taste. Seeing, sense of sight, touching, sense of touch, smell, smelling, and then tasting. All of this can be used in the communication process, but not at the same time. You may use one or combination of 2 or 3, but not all at once. You should know what kind of sense will you use in the communication process, the appropriate ones. Kasi hindi naman lahat ito is applicable in one communication setting. So pwedeng hearing and seeing combination, or touching or smelling if it's about food, and etc. So that is Berlos SMCR model. So let's have the next model, the second standard communication model, the transactional communication model. Transactional model, this illustrates how the sender and receiver take turns in conveying and receiving the message. So there is changing of roles in this part. Transactional, meaning the sender and receiver can already communicate with each other. There is already a feedback. Both the sender and the receiver may change roles during the communication process. So the sender and receiver is called the communicator. Example of the transactional communication model. This is the only model in the transactional communication model, the dance helix model. Dance helix trivia. This was conceptualized in 1967 by Frank Dance. Okay, Dance. The surname of Frank Dance, that became the name of the model. Helix, this word helix, if we look at the dictionary, this means an object having three-dimensional shape like a cone or cylinder that grows bigger as it moves up. Meaning the tip, the lower tip is or has a smaller space, and then as it moves upwards, it is having a wider space. Okay? It illustrates how the development and growth of communication will always be based on previous experience or behavior. From the word development, growth, previous experiences. This is related to the principle of communication, schemata-driven and progressive. So development and growth, this is communication is progressive. It progress, it is continuous, it is changing every now and then. There is a growth or there is a development. That's why it is communication is progressive. The word previous experiences or behavior. Previous meaning past experiences. That is related to schemata driven. Okay, for the dance helix model, this is the illustration. It is a cone-like shape that has a minimal space here, and then as it moves up, it is having a wider space. If you notice, this is the stages of life. The baby, the toddler, the childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and old age. So before the old age, bago siya nandiyan, bago siya makarating sa ganyang edad, napagdaanan niya yung pagiging baby, pagiging bata, pagiging binata, pagiging college siguro, or nag-aral din. And then nagtrabaho, nagkaroon ng pamilya, and then old age na. So lahat ng napagdaanan niya from this stage hanggang sa stage na yan, nagkaroon ng growth and development. That's why yung space na to, nagkaroon ng wider space as it moves up. Ayan na siya. Kaya naging parang spiral siya, kaya sabing helix. So communication will end after death. So kung patay ng tao, syempre, matatapos na rin doon yung communication. So for this stage, the infant, the form of communication is only crying. For the toddler or the childhood, yung nasa, sabi natin kinder to elementary, na marunong pa rin siya umiyak. Ginagamit niya pag-iyak in negative situations. Nadagdagan na rin yung mga skills niya in communication like reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Ayan. For this part naman, nung medyo lumaki na siya, siguro nasa high school na to, marunong pa rin naman siyang umiyak. Ginagamit pa rin niya yung pag-iyak in some situation. Yung communication skill niya like reading, writing, listening, speaking, nag-develop na rin yan. From basic, naging advanced na siguro dito. And for this part, yung crying, speaking, listening, reading, and writing, ginagamit niya pa rin. And for the communication skills, nag-advance pa. Mataas pang level kaysa dito. Also with this, yung working man, nagtatrabaho na to, syempre, nadagdagan din yung mga skills niya. Crying, andyan pa rin, nagagamit pa rin yung crying in some situation. The communication skills such as the reading, writing, listening, and speaking, naging expert na siya dyan. Nadagdagan na rin ng mga life skills like for example, organizational skills, problem-solving skills, managerial skills, organizational skills, and others. Ayan. And then for this family man, lahat ng napagdaanan dito, nasa kanya na rin, nadagdagan lang din ng iba pang skills. That's why, since mas marami na siyang nakakausap or nakaka-communicate or nakaka-converse every day, nagkakaroon parang development and growth yung communication skills niya. Until old age. Dahil sa old age na siya, lahat na napagdaanan niya mula dito, alam na niya lahat yan. Kasi napagdaanan niya. And ginagamit pa rin niya yan as time pass by. And then yun, hanggang before death, magde-develop pa rin yan. Okay. Pag namatay na or nandun na siya sa last stage of life, mag-e-end na rin doon yung communication process, mag-e-end na rin doon yung development and growth of the communication process. That's it for transactional communication model. The third communication model or the third standard communication model, this is about the interactive. From the word interact, meaning the sender and then the receiver is still involved in the communication process. The convergence model, it emphasizes the coding and decoding components of the process. It is like the interactive, it is like the transactional communication model that includes the sender and receiver, and then there is a feedback also. So focuses on the cycle of message exchanges between the sender and the receiver. Cycle of message meaning the interaction between the sender and the receiver. This is the illustration of Scrum's model of communication in 1954. So this is the sender, the receiver, the message, the feedback, the message stream. Okay, the interpreter, this is the sender who will encode the message. After encoding, he or she will choose a message to, a channel to be used in transmitting the message. After choosing, after transmission, the receiver will interpret the message. He or she will decode the message. After decoding, the interpreter will become the receiver will become the sender, and in this stage, he or she will be the encoder. Why? Because he or she will give the feedback in response to the message received. Okay? After na-encode, isi-send niya na ulit yan as a form of feedback, but before sending, dapat pa rin pumili ng channel to be used. And then after choosing appropriate channel, diretso na doon, isi-send na to a feedback. Yung dating sender, naging receiver na, and the receiver will decode the message, and afterwards will encode another message. So yan, cyclical na siya, cyclical process. So sender to receiver, sender to receiver, sender to receiver, sender to receiver. This is an never-ending process as long as they are conversing or communicating with each other. Okay, based on the field of experience of the sender and the receiver. Okay, the transmission of message is based on the field of experience of the sender and the receiver. What kind of field of experience? According to the society they are into, culture they belong, the situations they are in at the moment of the communication process, psychological or sociological effects or experiences. Past experiences about the message. Either it is about the cognitive aspect, the knowledge, or the situation or the experiences that they have been before. Okay. Take note that this Scrum's model of communication, the interactive communication model, is a never-ending process as long as the sender and receiver is still communicating with each other. Feedback is seen an important part of this model to ensure that communication takes place. Feedback. This will not be an interactive communication model or two-way communication process if there's no feedback. Kung walang feedback, ibig sabihin, linear communication model yan. But since merong feedback dito, ang tawag dito is interactive communication model. What are the different forms of communication involved in this interactive communication model? The interpersonal, the small group, and the intercultural communication. Interpersonal communication involving two persons in the communication process. Ito yung tinatawag na dyadic form of communication. Also, for the small group communication, this is still under interpersonal communication because inter meaning between or among group of people. A small group communication consists of 3 or more people involved in the communication process. The aim or the goal is to solve a problem. And then for the intercultural communication, it is also a part of this interactive communication model since the intercultural communication, it involves numerous number of senders and receivers. Okay. I hope you understood our lesson for today. And thank you for listening. Thank you for attending. Thank you for joining our virtual class. See you again next week. Have a nice day. Thank you and goodbye.